The worst case scenario is less choice on store shelves and online buying, prices spike, and families are really becoming tighter with their budgets.
Starting today, all cargo leaving China and heading for the U.S. will now carry a 30% tariff, which is a steep drop from that 145% tariffs that were in place for the past 6 weeks.
Bookings of container shipments from China to the U.S. are down nearly 50%.
When the world's busiest ports go silent, the heartbeat of global trade flatlines. In July 2025, something once unthinkable happened. 7 of the planet's largest seaports ground to a halt. Cranes froze midair. Container ships drifted offshore, unable to dock. Docks that once roared with life stood eerily empty. The spark? A tariff war that shut the gates on all U.S.-bound shipments. Within days, factories ran out of critical parts. Analysts warned of a 4 to 6% price surge in the U.S. Northeast by fall. Wall Street braced for billions in losses. And for millions whose livelihoods depended on this supply chain, the pinch had already begun. If this paralysis spread, every dinner table and every production line in America could feel the shock. The question wasn't if, it was how fast. Let's break it down in today's video. Note, this video is an independent analysis based on public sources. It does not represent any organization or political stance. We encourage you to think critically and share your thoughts in the comments. The Port of Los Angeles, the nation's biggest maritime artery, usually moves 1/3 of all U.S. seaborne trade, worth nearly $500 billion annually. Before the crisis, it ran like clockwork, cranes swinging, ships docking in rapid succession, trucks rumbling through the gates. But in May 2025, Washington's decision to slam a 145% tariff on imports from Asia's most populous nation triggered an immediate slowdown. Ship arrivals fell 5%, stripping more than 224,000 containers from the trade flow. For dock workers, hours were cut in half. Veterans who once had steady night shifts were now sitting at home, waiting for the phone to ring. Beyond the waterfront, industries like auto, electronics, and retail scrambled for alternatives, some turning to expensive air freight, pushing prices for cars, gadgets, and appliances higher for consumers. Canada felt it too. North America's tightly linked supply chain meant U.S.-assembled cars and machinery were delayed and costlier. Even after a temporary 90-day tariff rollback to 30%, recovery was weak. Import volumes inched up but stayed far below pre-crisis levels. Businesses hesitated to place big orders, fearing the tariffs could snap back overnight. A Goldman Sachs strategist summed it up. Inflation is now built into every container. One abrupt policy change had shaken an entire supply chain in weeks. If America's largest port could be crippled this badly, what happens when several face the same fate? Could North America adapt? Or would this mark the start of a new trade reality? Right next door, the Port of Long Beach, the twin to Los Angeles, faced its own collapse. Processing nearly 10 million containers a year, it's a lifeline for U.S. industries dependent on Asian goods. Yet by May 2025, container traffic had plunged 30% year over year. Nearly 150 sailings were canceled, 3 times April's total, many at the last minute, throwing logistics into chaos. The once bustling docks now sat stacked with idle containers and silent cranes. The 145% tariff had frozen imports, forcing giants like Amazon and Walmart to cancel or delay orders. Smaller businesses were hit hardest, caught between empty shelves and soaring import costs. The damage rippled inland. Manufacturing hubs ran short on semiconductors, engines, appliances, and TVs. Delivery times stretched up to 3 weeks. Prices spiked. Refrigerators up 15% in 2 months. Mid-size pickups climbing from $35,000 to $38,500. And big screen TVs costing 12 to 18% more. The ports had always been the lifeblood of America's economy. Now with the arteries clogged, the nation had to face a sobering truth. In an age of interconnected trade, one shock can bring the system to its knees, and recovery may be far slower than anyone expects. When the world's busiest trade routes slow to a crawl, it's not just cargo that's stuck, its entire economies. Across North America, major ports are feeling the shockwaves of tariffs, supply chain shifts, and global trade uncertainty. And the ripple effects? They're reaching your dinner table, your job, and your wallet. Some buyers are delaying big purchases. Others are switching to substitute goods. Struggling retailers are feeling the strain. At Long Beach, Port Director Mario Cordio called the downturn historic, especially striking after a record-breaking April. Experts warn that if the slowdown continues, businesses will be forced to change suppliers or cut production altogether. From this, Canadians and Americans alike can see a harsh truth. Over-reliance on a few major ports makes the entire trade network vulnerable. And if a giant like Long Beach can be brought to a near standstill, what happens to inland cities that depend almost entirely on imports? Oakland, America's agricultural lifeline, stalls. Perched on California's west coast, the Port of Oakland is a critical gateway for U.S. farm exports, from fresh fruit and nuts to frozen seafood, especially bound for Asia and Canada. But between April and June 2025, operations slowed dramatically. In just 3 months, 39 shipments were canceled. June throughput fell over 10% from May and nearly 13% from last year. Imports plunged more than 11% month to month. Exports dropped over 10%. Tariff hikes and U.S.-China trade volatility caused orders to be cut or delayed, while shipping lines shifted focus to more profitable routes, pushing agricultural goods to the back of the line. The damage has been sharpest for perishable and frozen products. Cherries, apples, grapes, almonds, salmon, crab. Shipping delays of up to a week raise storage costs, threaten quality, and sometimes force price cuts. Cherry export prices to Canada and Asia jumped from $4.50 to over $5.20 per pound. Gala apples rose 10 to 12% year over year. Frozen salmon surged from $8.50 to nearly $9.60 per pound. For Canadians, this means higher prices, less selection, and sometimes lower quality. For U.S. farmers, it means lost market share as buyers turn to Chile, New Zealand, or Norway. Experts warn that if this persists, decades-old export contracts could vanish. Seattle and Tacoma, the Pacific Northwest, feels the squeeze. Through the Northwest Seaport Alliance, Seattle and Tacoma connect North America with Asia. But in May 2025, cargo volumes dropped nearly 30% year-on-year. Seattle alone plunging almost 40%, the worst in over a decade. Container ship calls fell by more than a quarter. Even trucking activity, the port's lifeblood, slowed 16%. Tariffs again take much of the blame, alongside canceled or rerouted shipments. Workers feel the hit. Fewer shifts for longshoremen. Truckers down from 6 weekly runs to 2. Warehouses cutting hours. Nearby restaurants, fuel suppliers, and equipment companies are losing business too. When 7 major U.S. ports slow down at the same time, it's not just a shipping problem. It's the start of a chain reaction that can touch every wallet in North America. Savannah, the Southeast trade powerhouse, hits a wall. Savannah, the largest container port in the U.S. Southeast, is a vital link for everything from consumer goods to auto parts. Early 2025 saw a boom as companies rushed to beat new tariffs. But by June, container volumes were down nearly 10% year-on-year. The slowdown sparked rail bottlenecks, chassis shortages, and delivery delays of up to 5 days. A Georgia SUV plant shut down over missing engine modules. Alabama automakers held back shipments due to late gearboxes. Retailers lost sales when seasonal goods arrived too late. For Canada, Savannah's slowdown isn't distant news. It disrupts the entire North American trade chain. Newark Elizabeth, the East Coast's lifeline under strain. This port complex feeds goods to the Northeast and Midwest, from industrial components to fresh food. But in May 2025, containerized imports plunged nearly 29% year over year. The culprit? New tariffs. Importers slashed orders, delayed shipments, and rerouted cargo to avoid extra costs. This isn't a minor dip. Fewer shipments mean fewer trucks on the road, slashing logistics company earnings. Small trucking firms are struggling to survive. Warehouses that were once packed now face too much labor and overhead with not enough goods to move. For consumers, the hit is coming fast. Prices could climb 4 to 6% in 2025, with shortages in pharmaceuticals, auto parts, and electronics. Repairs will cost more, waits will be longer. Even Canadian businesses feel the pinch as part of this cargo moves north by truck and rail. The ripple effect on households and businesses. For families, the squeeze is obvious. A $100 grocery basket might now buy only $92 to $95 worth of food. Winter tires in Ontario could cost up to 8% more. A $900 refrigerator now sells for $1,030, pushing people to repair instead of replace. For businesses, every delay drains money. An auto plant waiting 2 extra days for transmissions racks up hundreds of idle labor hours. Dealers quietly raise prices, $300 more for a basic car, up to $1,500 for a premium model, forcing many to delay or downgrade purchases. Canada feels the drag later, but longer. A Quebec distribution center getting goods a week late might miss a sales season entirely. A Manitoba food processor paying $1,500 more per container may have to settle for lower quality materials, raising defect rates. Veterans of past trade disruptions see the warning signs. Idle containers, broken contracts, overnight price jumps. But today's economy is even more interconnected. One choke point can shake the whole chain. And when 7 ports slow together, the question isn't if something will break, it's where. Could North America be entering a new trade reality? One where speed is no longer guaranteed? This was just the beginning. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up. Digital Garage has so much more in store.